Hi there, and welcome to GIGA Data Centers. Here at GIGA Data Centers, we strive to create the most efficient data centers in the industry. We shoot for achieving extremely low PUEs through the technology that you'll be seeing today as we go through the tour of our facility. Wanted to point out a few things while I'm outside of the building here. One of the first things that we like to discuss when talking about our facility here is the actual location and the building itself. Here at GIGA, we take security very seriously, and hopefully you can see behind me that our entire facility is enclosed with razor wire fencing, as well as an access gate that any and all of our customers or potential deliveries must go through in order to achieve access into the facility. Customers, when they come on site, have the opportunity to park either outside of the secure gated entrance, or they can pull up to our call box, speak with our security personnel on site, and be granted access in through our gate so that they can come park inside of our gated area. Also, directly above me, one of the reasons that we ended up here in the location that we're in, hopefully you can see the power lines up above. One thing that we learned as we started to make moves on this building was the available power that we have in this location. We have upwards of 100 megawatts of available power from highly reliable energy sources such as Duke Energy. Some of the Duke Energy facilities that feed the grid that this facility sits on are the nuclear plant at the south end of Lake Norman, as well as the steam station on the north end. Moving on inside here, items that really drove us to choose this location is outrunning just along the street outside of our gate, Mecklenburg Highway. There are upwards of 12 network providers providing connectivity, running their MPLS and their long haul connections from areas like Atlanta up to Northern Virginia, DC, New York, south from Atlanta down to Miami, Florida, and so on. So connectivity was a huge piece of why we ended up in the facility that we're in here. Couple that with the power that's available to the facility, and then actually the physical structure of our building itself. Those are really the key pieces of why we chose this site for our Charlotte, North Carolina location, specifically in Mooresville. Little history on the building here. This actually used to be a Dale Earnhardt facility, one of the race shops in the NASCAR circuit. Prior to Dale Earnhardt running out of this facility, the site used to be an Eaton manufacturing facility. So the concrete walls that you see behind me that were part of the Eaton operation are over 10 inches thick concrete. It's honeycombed on the inside for added stability. So if it comes to any weather-related incidents that may blow through Charlotte, we are fully covered here from the strength perspective of the building. Also directly behind me here, hopefully you can see this louvered wall that's behind me. This is essentially a cutout for our facility that allows natural air to flow into our facility. GIGA Data Centers is a free cooling facility. So as we go through the tour today, you're not going to see much in the way of mechanical cooling or big HVAC setups. So essentially this wall here is what's providing all of the air that's on our data center floor that we are using to provide cooling in our facility. And we'll talk a little bit more about the ways that we're able to manipulate that air, whether it's for temperature control or humidity control. So as we travel into the facility, any of our customers that come on site will either be buzzed in by security, or they can badge in and gain access into the building. A couple things to point out from inside of our lobby area. We have a customer-facing, customer-friendly conference room that our folks have the ability to use, whether they want to run things like off-site meetings. Maybe they have executives that would like to come on to the property here, see where a customer's environment lives. Maybe it's for auditing or insurance purposes. So our customers are able to utilize the conference space behind me here to run any meetings that they may need to directly. Also behind me here, this is our network operations center that we have for the facility. Our network operations team is going to be tracking all of the critical components of our facility from our location here. So they're checking all of the critical electrical components, power components, all of the wind chill modular enclosures that I'll show you in just a second here. They're checking all of the critical statistics around those key devices and appliances. They're also going to be monitoring things like the news, the weather, keeping an eye on any major weather-related incidents that may be, coming through the area. So on-site knock right here in the facility. Also behind me then is our security window here, where any customers that come on site would have to check in. They'll be required to turn over a photo ID and check in with our security guard. The security guard would then provide either a visitor's badge or the key to a customer environment so that customer can come on site and perform any of the work required while they're here at the facility. To the GIGA office space, we require 3-factor authentication to gain access onto the data center floor. We require a badge swipe, a biometric fingerprint, and a PIN code in order to enter the man trap.
Access granted.
Once proper credentials are input, you have the ability to enter into the man trap. As you can see, I'll do a slow spin here. I'm completely enclosed in the man trap here until the first door is closed. Should also point out here that our security officer has access to be able to see me while I'm inside of the man trap. Also point out from this angle all the different camera views that they're monitoring all around our facility, whether it's outside on the exterior perimeter of the building, interior of our facility, you name it, our security team is going to be monitoring that. So now that our first door is closed, I'm able to open our second door and exit the man trap and enter onto the data center floor. A couple key things to point out now that we're in our actual data hall here is, number one, hopefully you can see, if I hold this up a little bit higher here, that the floor that I'm standing on, this is actually a concrete pad. This is not raised flooring like you would have in a traditional raised floor data center. Those types of facilities are using heavily mechanical cooling technologies where they're pumping air underneath the floor as a way or a method of cooling the actual data center floor. In our facility here, this concrete pad, again tying back to the Eaton manufacturing days, this is about 6 feet deep worth of concrete that we're standing on. So from a security perspective, there are no risks associated to anyone even trying to do things maliciously, such as tunnel into the facility as a way to gain access. Also noted here again is that directly behind me are what we call our wind chill modular enclosure units. These wind chill appliances here that we use are designed to completely manipulate the air that we are drawing in, as I showed from the front of our building. They draw that air in through the louvers that you see behind me here. And then we have a few different phases of filtering, also phases of introducing liquid or cooling into that process. And then that air travels into the cold aisle of a customer's environment to be able to cool their equipment. Each of these modular enclosures have the ability to hold 10 racks of IT equipment. Also inside of the racks that we have in these units, we give the ability to support up to 52 U of usable space. Mentioned earlier, one of the things that we do here, one of our key missions or goals at GIGA Data Centers is to provide and build the most efficient data centers on the planet. So within our units, because of the high levels of efficiency that we achieve and the way that we manage our cooling, we allow our customers to populate each rack with upwards of 50 kilowatts of power per rack. One of the key differentiating features here about our facility is that is a huge cost saver. Unlike a raised data center, or raised floor data center, excuse me, where you may reach a maxed out kilowatt limit for power, maybe in the 8 to 12 kW range. Where that adds cost for customers is that requires a customer, once they've achieved 8 or 12 kW in that rack, to then have to purchase the next rack on the floor, and then the next rack and the next rack. So here at GIGA, we could essentially do in one rack what it would take upwards of 4 to 5 racks at a traditional data center, because we can support those higher power densities. The module behind me here I have open and expanded out so that we can take a peek inside and show you some of the key differentiators here. So one thing I wanted to point out here just quickly is that each of our units, hopefully you can see the screen behind me here, have a screen that highlights all of the workings and things that are going on inside the unit here. So if a customer were ever to come on site, they can actually see things like their total IT load in the unit, things like the exact PUE that this unit is drawing at the moment in time that that customer is on site. They'll be able to track things like fan output, when the doors were last opened for security measures. So a lot of great customer information here on each of the PLC screens that are running and managing these units here. As I start to dive into our units here, the first couple chambers that we're going to jump into in one of our enclosures are what we refer to as the mixing chambers. So those chambers are where we're doing all of the filtering and, again, introducing liquid, whether it's for cooling purposes, humidity controls, whatever that may be. So as we step into this unit here, a couple key things to point out is that on the very front side of our units here, we have a filtering mesh here, a wire mesh, that's going to help filter out any critters, any small bugs that may have been able to travel into the facility, flies, mosquitoes, things along those lines. They're going to be captured in the wire filtering that we have right at the very front of our enclosures here. On this side then, we have MERV 11 filters. These are the same style filters that one would see in a hospital operating room. So these filters are going to be grabbing any of the particulates in the air, the dust particles, the pollens, those kinds of things that could impact customer equipment were these not here. So whether it is small bugs, small creatures that we're filtering out from the wire mesh on the very front, down to the very fine filtering that we're doing for any particulates in the air, we're making sure that any of the air that we're delivering into these customer units is clean and safe air to actually deliver in through that. This is where we introduce liquid. We use a technology here combined with the free cooling aspect of our facility called adiabatic cooling. Adiabatic cooling, kind of a big word for evaporative cooling. It's a technology that's been around essentially since the Egyptians. All we are doing to assist with cooling is, as you can see behind me here, we have a series of solenoid valves that would slowly start trickling water down through these honeycombed filters that are beside me here. As that air is being drawn through these chambers, through the filtering, through the adiabatic media, volume expansion occurs as air travels through that liquid, and that's what actually lowers the temperature of the air that's inside of these units. So anytime we need to add cooling inside one of our enclosures, we'll start that process of dripping water down through the adiabatic media that we have inside this chamber here. Another use case for introducing liquid into our enclosures here would be if we ever needed to manipulate humidity. Think of maybe a very dry day in the winter. We may need to actually increase humidity in the air so that we're not delivering any dry static air into the cold aisle where that customer equipment's living. That can be harmful to the equipment. So we may need to add liquid in that case to increase humidity levels. So again, whether it's for cooling, humidity controls, etc., we have the ability to completely manipulate that. This side of the wall here is really to catch any condensation. So if the air moving through this chamber ever has too much humidity in it, that humidity would collect on these metal shears here, drip down to the bottom. The floor in this chamber of the unit is actually essentially a giant drip pan. So if any solenoid valves were to fail, if too much water were to catch on the condensate shears and drop to the floor, we would then have the ability to easily remove that water from the unit. So that would never be an issue. Once we've then filtered that air, made sure it's good clean air that we're delivering along, we've added liquid, whether it's for, again, temperature control or humidity control. That air then travels into the cold aisle that I'm standing in here. A big catalyst in these units is directly behind me. We have a fan wall, floor to ceiling. Hopefully you can see that behind me. Literally floor to ceiling, 4 rows of 3 fans. What this is doing is providing even cooling across the front of any of the equipment living in these IT racks. Again, big differentiator in our facility against a traditional raised floor facility. If we just think about basic science, cold air wants to drop. So if we have a raised floor facility where that particular provider is pumping cold air up through the floor, you may encounter scenarios where through having to force that air vertical, it may miss some of the equipment lower in the rack. The middle of the rack may get the most of it, and the top of the rack might get whatever's left or isn't sucked in by the equipment in the middle of the rack. So that's why oftentimes these traditional raised floor facilities will cap out a rack somewhere in that 8 to 12 kilowatt range of power, because at that point, when you're generating that much heat inside of a rack, it can cause issues with hot spotting in the data center floor. Raised floors also have challenges with weight. So the more equipment that you put into a rack, it could cause challenges like sagging in those raised floor environments, where again, as I mentioned before, we're sitting on 6 feet of concrete. So there are virtually no weight limits to the amount of equipment that you could stack in one of these 52U racks. Again, just as a differentiator, many traditional facilities, unless you pay additional charges, will only provide you with a 42 or maybe 48U rack. So again, in a GIGA Data Center wind chill, you have 52U of usable rack space for your equipment. Again, like I was mentioning with this fan wall, providing that even distribution, floor to ceiling, of the air that we've manipulated and filtered in the first 2 chambers, that's what allows us to support those higher power densities that we can generate in here, because we are providing even cooling to any piece of IT equipment that is in this chamber. Just over the top of my head there in the back, hopefully you can see that, that's a camera. So all of our wind chills are equipped with surveillance. So as soon as that cold aisle door opens, that camera is going to start recording. We track and monitor and hold all of that footage, so that if anybody ever has a security incident, they can audit that footage from us and we can supply that back to our customers. Inside one of our hot aisles, though they're not mounted in this test unit that I'm in right here, all of our racks include PDUs, or power distribution units. That's where any of the customers would plug their IT equipment in. Those PDUs are tied into the bus bars that you can see above my head here. In GIGA Data Centers, throughout our building, we have standardized on Starline busway. The reason being, Starline busway gives us the ability to easily interchange the breakers above my head. The value there is if a customer, say, week 1 they move in, they may only need 20 amps of power. So we could set a unit up with 20 amp breakers, delivered both A and B for redundant power. Maybe 6 months down the road or a year down the road, that same customer needs to increase maybe the amount of equipment that they're running in the rack. Maybe they move to a different technology and they need higher power. We can then easily swap out the breakers for something like a 50 or 60 amp breaker, for instance. Most traditional raised floor facilities would have to call in the electrician, wait for the electrician to come out. The electrician's gonna have to run that power whip underneath the floor to the rack, and that process could take upwards of maybe a couple weeks. We can do this on the fly. So, time to value for our customers is extremely high here in a GIGA Data Centers unit. Also from this hot aisle here, actually I should also mention in the cold aisle as well, we completely isolate the cold aisle and the hot aisle. They're isolated from each other. So any air that we're manipulating in that cold aisle is going to travel through that IT equipment in the racks, and the dry exhaust heat that it's going to produce and that is kicked into this hot aisle, we can do some cool things with. Maybe it is, again, that cold day in the winter where we might actually need to increase the temperature. We might need to make it hotter. We could actually close off louvers that are above my head and recirculate that hot air back up through the mixing process that I showed you earlier as a way to increase temperature. Maybe it's a very humid day in summer. We might still need to reintroduce some of that heat back into that mixing process as a way to lower humidity, or essentially burn out some of the humidity that's in the air traveling into our facility. So we can, again, really do anything that we need to do in these units from a temperature control standpoint, whether it's, you know, cooling the air, warming the air, adding or removing humidity. We have the opportunity to control all of that in our windshield enclosures. Just to point out a couple other things here within the data center. The units behind me here, this is what we call our phase one build out. We have 18 wind chills currently built out on the data center floor here. Once we reach about 50 or 60% capacity on those units, we will start to build out phase 2 and 3 and beyond. By our calculations here, we can put upwards of about 2,300 racks on the data center floor here. So we do have plenty of room within this building for expansion. You can see them behind me over here, the blue garage doors that you see over there. The building actually has a shipping receiving area that has 5 drive-in bays. So if anybody ever needed to send equipment here, we have the ability of allowing 18-wheelers to back into the facility, maybe roll those customer racks off and out into the floor here. Customers also have, on this side of the building over here within the cutout, a secure area to have hardware or equipment delivered on site. We have a secure caged environment for that, so any shipments that we receive to the building here, our shipping receiving personnel will document all of that. The goal is to put that into a ticketing system for our customers to alert them and let them know that the equipment has arrived, at which point they can come on site, unbox that equipment, and put it into their environments. Up the yellow and gray staircase that you see over here, this is our electrical mezzanine, and I'll take a walk up there. But what we'll see up there is that we house all of the critical electrical components within our facility up on that second level. Main reason for that was to really take advantage of the vertical space in the building here, maximize the space that we're using in the data center. And it also did things for us like shorten our fiber runs and copper runs in the building here. So as far as building out a facility, it really helped us do so in a more cost-efficient manner. Outside of our building, if you can see the garage door right about there, just behind that, right outside of the facility, we have an on-site substation where we have a direct feed from Duke Energy. From that substation, the power is run into the building just over my head here in this gray bus duct that you can just see up in the corner of the phone there. That power is then fed up to the electrical mezzanine and run through all of our critical electrical gear. So let's take a walk up. Again, as you can see behind me, the gray bus bar right here, that is where all of the power is being fed from Duke Energy, from our substation, into the building. All of that power is being fed in at 480 volts. From the bus duct below us here, that power is being fed into our master switches. Our master switches are what take that power from the street and split it into dual feeds. That way we can provide our customers with redundant power feeds into their enclosures, more specifically into the racks inside of their enclosures. Once that power is split into an A and B feed, we utilize the TLE series UPS from GE. These are highly efficient UPSs. But essentially what these are doing, they are ensuring that the power that is being sent to them from the switches, from Duke Energy, is good, clean power. Assuming that that power is good and is clean from Duke Energy, those UPSs are saying, I'm getting the power, everything's good, and they're passing that on to our transformers. The transformers is where we step down that power from 480 volts down to 415/240 volt power. And that's what's actually delivered out onto the floor to our customers. So 240 volt, 3-phase power is what we're delivering into those customer racks. The transformers, after they step that down though, they send that power over to our switchboards, and the switchboards actually, like I said, then take that power and deliver it out onto the data center floor. What we just walked through is a 1 megawatt run of our power setup. Up here in our electrical mezzanine, we have 4 megawatts of power set up in these 1 megawatt runs. Also important to note, you can see in the cabinet directly behind me here, each of our UPSs are supported by 1 megawatt of lithium-ion batteries. The composition that we use is lithium-ion phosphate because these have much higher degrees that they could reach before any thermal runaway could occur. I believe it's about 270 degrees. So each rack behind me here supports 200 kilowatts of lithium-ion batteries. These lithium-ion batteries are also hot swappable. I mentioned before that we have a NOC on site here. The NOC is monitoring, again, all of this critical infrastructure that we have up here. If they ever detect or are alerted that one of these lithium-ion cells is malfunctioning, they can come up and using one of the spares that we have on site, they can swap in a new lithium-ion cell and keep everything running. The other job of the UPS is just to ensure, like I mentioned before, that we are getting good power from the substation from Duke Energy. If the UPSs ever notice that we are no longer receiving power from the street, from Duke, the UPSs will kick on the battery backups that we have here. From our battery backups, we have the ability to run this facility at about 6 to 7 minutes on 100% of the building load, strictly off of these batteries. Now what the batteries are doing though, is they're giving our generators that we have on site here. We have dual Cummins diesel generators. They're 2.25 megawatt diesel generators. These UPS batteries are giving those generators time to turn on before flipping full facility load over onto the generators. Typically that process is in the seconds. But just in the event that it does take one of our generators longer than expected to spin up, we can run off the lithium-ion batteries that we have here. Again up here, as I mentioned before, each 1 megawatt run that we have for our electricity, each side is one of the redundant runs that we provide down to the floor for our customers. So this side over here, this is our A side power run, and then off to this side here, our B side power. The reason that we have the facility set up for AB power is essentially for concurrent maintainability. If we ever had to do any work on any of our UPSs, our transformers, or switchboards, we could take down completely either the A side or the B side, and again, either then the A side or the B side would be able to provide enough power for our customers to function while we're performing that maintenance. That maintenance could be scheduled, it could be emergent, but either way, having the building set up in a redundant power feed the way that we have it, we do have the ability to perform maintenance on any of the electrical components that we need to without our customers being impacted or having any downtime due to that maintenance. That is now assuming that the customers that we have are running equipment inside of their racks that have dual power supplies and that they are set up correctly. Behind me here is the center aisle, essentially, of our data hall. All of our units down through the middle of our facility here are set up in quad formations, and the main reason that we did that was so that we could put all of the hot aisles together, so hot aisle to hot aisle on all of these units. That way, as you can see the ducting work behind me here, I mentioned while inside the unit that we may need to recirculate heat that's generated from the servers back through the wind chill. This ducting here, maybe it's a day where we don't need to do that, we have the ability then to pump all of that heat straight out the roof of the building, or we also have the ability to tie that heat into our office space. So again, doing things to keep our operational costs and our PUE, or our power usage effectiveness, as low as possible. From the top up here, we also get a look of the inside view of the main wall that I showed you while outside of our building, where again, this is the cutout that's allowing all of the air from outside of the facility to flow into our building here. And again, that is the airflow that provides all of the cooling, or all of the airflow, I should say, that travels into those wind chills that we use to cool and manipulate for our customer environments inside the racks. Our building has dual network rooms. Poke our head into our north side room here. So our network rooms, these are the rooms where all of our carriers have access into our building. They can essentially host all of their networking equipment inside of this room. And this is what provides connectivity for all of our customers that are living in the data center. Through the wall behind me here, you can see the cable trays going through the cutouts in the room behind me. That is then our DMARC room. So that is the location in the building where the GIGA network infrastructure is tying into all of our outside carrier connectivity, where we then take that and route it onto the floor through cross connects into our customer racks. As mentioned, this is our north side carrier room. We do also have a south side carrier room directly across the building from me, where we essentially can use that as a fail-safe for our network carriers. The whole idea there being that if somebody out on the street were to ever be performing any construction, maybe they accidentally cut one of the fiber lines out on the street, assuming that one of our carriers has taken redundant paths into our facility, if the path to the north side network room is severed, the path to the south side room should still be intact, and our customers should still be receiving connectivity from their network provider. Also important to mention that we are a carrier neutral facility, so we're going to be trying to pull in as many of the 12 or so providers, as I mentioned earlier, that are running out along the street, out along Mecklenburg Highway. Wanted to also quickly point out that we do have some flexible spaces in our building as well, depending on customer requirements or customer needs. Maybe their needs focused around business continuity, disaster recovery, but if we come back into the office space in our building, this room here hosts a series of cubicles that our customers have the ability to work from. So again, in the event of a disaster or maybe to enact a business continuity plan, our customers can send employees here to work. We can set these cubes up with phone systems, internet. We have Wi-Fi throughout the building, so our customers can work when they are on site here. Maybe it's just a client that's on site for a day. Maybe they're going through an install or some kind of hardware refresh and they need to be here for an extended period of time. Our clients can come into this space and have a place to sit down their laptop and work from. This space, I should also mention, is something that we can lease or provide as a service to our customers if they need a dedicated disaster recovery space that they can work from. You can also see from this angle some of the office space that we have in here as well. So if somebody's on site, needs to make a private call, they can jump into one of the offices, shut the door, and have some privacy there as well. Just continuing to lap back through the building a little bit. I'm walking through some of the GIGA Data Centers office space. This is the area in the building where GIGA employees work from. We have a little customer lounge area that we can access. But also wanted to point out that we have another conference room, again, typically more so for GIGA Data Centers activities. But as I mentioned earlier in the lobby, the conference room that we have out there, if a customer is ever on site and needs space larger than what we have out in the lobby, this is also an area where customers could come in and run a meeting from, project up onto the screen, whatever they may need to do. So we do have a couple conference room areas that our customers have access to. Behind me, just for fun, the Dale Earnhardt signature, as I mentioned before. This facility was most recently, prior to GIGA, a Dale Earnhardt race facility. So we've tried to keep around some of the nostalgia of that era and what used to take place here in this building. It also ties heavily into Mooresville, where our building is located. Mooresville is the NASCAR capital of the United States, essentially. So a lot of good, race-inspired things have happened here, and so we wanted to keep a piece of that alive. But after going through the office space there, that circles us back out into the GIGA Data Centers lobby and wraps up our tour. So hopefully you found this helpful, and we would love to talk more with you about it if you have any questions. Thank you.